Hey there, listeners. Boy, have I got an interesting conversation for you today. So, this is a chat with a former friend of Sam Harris's who has done several projects with and for him. He's made a documentary that followed him and Maajid Nawaz on tour, which you'll hear us talk about. He's done other projects like a clip show for Sam's podcast. He's written a book with Sam's wife. He knows and is or was friendly with all the ex-Muslims that I have so many unpleasant things to report about. So, he was once really immersed in that whole scene. But more recently, something very interesting has happened, even in that so-called heterodox sphere that does not allow for any actual intellectual diversity. You wouldn't think it possible, but there truly seems to be some actual dissent and disagreement. Like there's a real rift between someone like my upcoming guest, Jay Shapiro, and someone like Sam Harris or Coleman Hughes. And the thing driving this divide is, Israel and their ridiculous, endless defense of its actions. I was very pleasantly surprised to discover some recent videos on YouTube, which just showed up on my feed from Jay's Dilemma podcast, where he was trying to debunk Zionist talking points. He was trying to reason with and inform someone like Coleman Hughes, but Coleman wasn't interested in actually learning anything that won't just parrot the Israeli state narrative. So, I had known of Jay on Twitter long, long ago because he asked me to participate in that documentary, but it didn't end up happening. But that's where I knew him from. So at first, I was really confused about if this person showing up on my YouTube feed debunking Zionist narratives was actually this same Jay Shapiro that I knew from the IDW/heterodox-sphere. So I did some Googling, and sure enough, it was. So I reached out to him, and he was kind enough to come on. We had a very interesting chat, I think. He's someone that is clearly becoming disillusioned with all these people that were once his friends or acquaintances who are now being outed as defenders and apologists of something as horrifying as genocide. So, just to be clear, there are some softer takes and characterizations of Harris and, say, Yasmin Mohammed. Those are not representative of my views, but I think I definitely have a lot of time and patience for someone who is working through unraveling those feelings about former friends and being on the right side of an issue as huge as this one that so many people in those circles are absolutely not. So I think it's great. Jay's a lot nicer about them than I would be, but I'd like to encourage wherever this is going. So yeah. This was quite a long conversation, so I'll be splitting it into 2 parts. All right, enjoy. And if you'd like to hear the extended versions of both parts, you can sign up via patreon.com/nicemangoes. Or you can purchase the episode individually as well. And if you can't support via Patreon, do remember to leave podcast reviews.
Welcome to the Polite Conversations podcast, where every episode is focused on civility, decorum, and good manners. And I'm your lovable, non-controversial host, Ina. If you know me, you know I definitely don't like to ruffle any feathers at all.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Polite Conversations. Today, I've got a very interesting guest here. Jay Shapiro is a filmmaker and author. He once made a film with Sam Harris and Maajid Nawaz, and he also used to have a podcast with Coleman Hughes. Hello, Jay. How's it going?
It's going well. That film is almost exactly 10 years old now, believe it or not.
That
it's been
is
quite a decade.
Wild. Wow. Yeah. So tell me more about yourself. What is your background? How were you working with Sam Harris, Maajid Nawaz, and how'd you end up doing a podcast with Coleman Hughes?
Yeah.
You're an unusual guest for this podcast.
Am I? Yeah, that's fun. Well, I've known of your existence through the crazy interwebs probably for more than that decade as this strange lurking avatar that a lot of people know. So it's good to finally cross paths because we probably agreed on much more than you think for many decades, for honestly more than a decade.
Yeah.
So yeah, but now we'll see what we get into because I could start the conversation or my introducing myself with my personal story or my sort of professional one because it's both. You know, the Cliff Notes version of my personal life as I grew up in sort of a nominally Zionist, Jewish, conservative household in Pennsylvania, in suburbs, and post-Holocaust American Judaism, which is, in my experience, was very little God talk and very little sort of afterlife conversations, but this tacit kind of political project of Israel and the Holocaust. So I could get into all of that stuff, which is the personal stuff, but more to answer your question about my crossing paths with these kinds of characters is I was on a college campus. I was born in 82, so you could do the math. I was a sophomore when 9/11 hit. I was in Massachusetts. And that event, like for many of us, I think popped a bubble of sort of not asking a lot of hard questions. And I entered the conversation on my college campus fairly naively, and was very animated by the question of that everyone was asking of the kind of why did that happen, which was formulated in many different ways, including why do they hate us, famously on like the Newsweek covers, and this lurking conversation about political violence, religious violence, the history of American, endeavors in the Middle East, blood for oil, like all that stuff was just colliding in my head in such a way that I was really animated by, because that event and the shock of it and the violence of it is an emotional punch in the gut, which is the point of those kind of events. And so my introduction to someone like Sam was really born out of the frustration of the conversation and the refrain of this has nothing to do with Islam. And my fear about that narrative being pushed, which was not, remember it clearly, was not some like woke lefty thing, was George W. Bush saying it as well.
Yeah.
Was not that, it's all Islam and these Muslims are so terrible. It was literally fear that America was going to go crazy and that, Joe Schmo.
Which it kind of did.
It absolutely did. Right. Yeah. No, it did. And so, but the initial fear was basically, that somebody, who doesn't look into these things very deeply and watches whatever, a bunch of Fox News or whatever, would hear someone say that and then see Osama bin Laden reading the Quran and be like, well, they sure are reading the Quran a lot, for it has nothing to do with Islam. I'm going to go beat the shit out of my Muslim neighbor, right? So what I feared was a reprisal of the tacit racism in America being unleashed and taking it out on Muslims. And so then someone like Sam comes along and broadcasts this kind of worry, and we can obviously we'll talk about people like him and his philosophy and everything else, but broadcast that kind of worry in an expression of something like, if we don't have an honest conversation about this, the right is going to have it for us, and we're not going to like what they do with it. And I was rather convinced by that. Classic. Yeah, I was rather convinced by that expression. Obviously, I don't think he was very thoughtful, honest, or courageous about who we are in that phrase. But that's where I jumped in, and I was like, all right, this guy at least is like asking questions. But I'll be very honest from the beginning. I like Sam, and anything we say on the show about Sam and Coleman, like, I don't mean this as like, they're people, they were friends. I don't think I can call them that anymore, which is really not my choice. Like, I'll be honest, I've tried to keep that friendship open for a long time, and I don't think Sam is interested. And he knows.
Oh, no. Have you been canceled?
privately. I mean,
by
we
the
could get
anti-woke mob.
Yeah, it's a different kind of person. It's a very personal relationship. It's frankly a little hurtful. Like we're going to probably have some fun in this, but it's actually like a really devastating, shitty thing that's happened between us on just a personal level. But back to like those early post 9/11 days, I didn't care that much about Sam Harris, the man. I had some ability as a writer and a filmmaker, and I wanted to help. And what I cared about was the audiences, because I think there was good people showing up asking difficult questions, and there was a lot of confused people and probably shitty people showing up, but it was like there's people energized by this conversation. It's obviously insanely consequential that we do this well for a million reasons, and that's where I wanted to kind of help and get involved and assist and blah blah blah. Anyway, years later, as the conversation I think was reaching a boiling point and Donald Trump was becoming a legitimate presidential candidate, I reached out when I saw Sam and Maajid going on a tour together in Australia with a company called Think Inc., which disbanded.
Which was like a grifter situation. No, not Think Inc. There was another guy who was doing...
You're thinking of Travis Pangburn, who was just like a total dope. And like,
yes, that's right.
You know, I'll say this up front in case Sam or any of his current fans might be listening. They love to say this thing like that.
I'm sure they do.
I hope they do, because they love to say this thing that like Sam's just a really bad judge of character.
All the time?
That might be true, but fuck off. It's not about me. Like, I could tell you things about Sam. Sam's just a dude, but you know, we could get into some of the details there. But Pangburn was a fucking idiot and a dope and, you know, whatever, in over his head and all that kind of stuff. But again, I cared about the audiences there. I was part of that rescue mission in New York, if you remember, when it collapsed and the whole thing, whatever. He ended up stealing like $500 from everyone who bought tickets, and people had still bought plane tickets to come to New York. I was part of the rescue mission to like put on some cool things for them, because I was literally at that time.
What? Sorry, you got cut off for a second.
Like events. It was like cool things, talks and stuff. I even like helped Coleman like appear at one of them and that kind of stuff. I hosted a few people at an edit suite at the time, because I was actually making the film at the time, and I was showing them like outtakes and uncut. Okay. Anyway.
So hang on. So you reached out to Sam when you didn't know him, when he was doing that like tour with Maajid Nawaz, after they had written that book together, which was called Islam and the Future of Tolerance, something like that.
Same name as the film that I did.
And that's when I came across you for the first time, because I think you reached out to me in DMs on Twitter asking if I wanted to be in this documentary.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I try to remain anonymous online, so if you want to use my voice or something, fine. But I don't think it never worked out because of my... Yeah,
it didn't work out. And we could, and you know, go ahead.
I'm quite glad, because I would not want to be in a Sam Harris documentary now. Like back then, I was a fan of Sam's. But
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's been very much a journey, right? I like you, perhaps, but so I, once Bill Maher invited me onto his show again, that didn't work out because I was like, well, I want to be anonymous. So they were like, oh, we'll do a silhouette or something. We even talked about all that, and then I think it just didn't. And I'm, again, very glad, because I do not want to have this history of being on the Bill Maher show, considering what it's become now.
Yeah, those are tough questions. It's true. I mean, like, the truth is, I'm still proud of the film, because as a film,
I didn't mean to insult you.
No, not at all. And
with Harris.
Totally. And I don't even consider it like, it's not a Sam Harris film. It's a film about these two guys who have this conversation, and I wanted to represent it, even though I didn't agree with a lot of the ideas in it from both of them. I wanted to present it with a high fidelity to their work and their original conversation and their ideas. And I think I succeeded in doing that. And that's, I'm going to come back to this. I think that's an important... Yeah.
So you reached out to him as someone who doesn't know him, and then
I reached out, let me just be totally transparent with that. I reached out to the company touring him, Think Inc., who's two producers in Australia, being like, hey, I saw you're putting on this tour with these guys, I've been following their work. I think it's a hugely important conversation. You're getting huge audiences. Like, I think there's a film here. Yeah, and one thing led to another. Both of them were interested. We raised some money, and voila, we had a film. So no, that's kind of how it happened. And yeah, it was the backdrop of that timing was kind of, pre-2016. Actually, Trump got elected while I was almost done with the edit of the film. And I remember emailing Sam when Trump got elected and asking him, what do you think we should do? And basically our conversation then was we should just totally ignore it and just let it sort of be a backdrop thing. I think part of that is because he was a little bit secretly wondering if Trump would be, in his quotes, good on this question of Islam. I don't know how he feels about that now. But yeah, no, the film is the film. I am proud of it. I think that and like I said, it was a successful effort aesthetically too, of taking like literally a phone call and turning it into a visual experience, which I think I did well. And I think it has good arguments in it and terrible arguments in it. And it presents.
I never saw it, but you did. Yeah. You did feature Yasmin Mohammed, Faisal Al-Mutar, and those people have completely gone off the rails. The
only one who hasn't. And just to finish the loop on the film, it's like, the film is two men having this conversation, and it is what it is. And then the whole idea of the end is, which is when we go off the book, basically, is like, well, the conversation has to continue, right? Like, this is a debate, this is a conversation, this has to go into the future. And you would have been in the lineup at the end with various voices of ex-Muslim or Muslim community who may agree or disagree with certain parts, to just show that, like, we have to keep talking about this. And the only one of all of the names who I think has really kept their footing morally.
I'm holding my breath.
It's Ali Rizvi, who I'm speaking to actually on my show this Friday in a sort of casual conversation. Ali, I think, has seen his way through some of it.
Politely disagree, but okay.
Oh, interesting. Well, listen on Friday, because he's kind of the only one from that world who has come back to me, been like, "You're completely right about this shit." So maybe he's in a bit more of a process.
He's definitely better than the ones who went full white identity politics.
Reaction. Yeah.
But he's still very much like in both things are bad, wokeness, or I don't know, maybe he's evolved beyond that. But the last time I looked in was
Well, we'll see.
It was a centrism.
Oh, interesting. I don't know. Tune in on Friday. I'll release it later, but we're gonna have a little Islam and the Future of Tolerance 10 years revisited conversation, he and I. But so that was that. And then, but meanwhile, I started just a moral philosophy podcast with Coleman Hughes, which was just sort of like fun moral dilemma stuff. And he was my foil of like the super consequentialist, and I am not. And we did a show when we were living in New York together, and then that ended mostly just for geographic reasons, and I think the format was just hard to do with two people, so I just continued on doing it myself. But it's kind of a fun little archive of Coleman, the let's call it shallow philosopher. Talking.
So that was the only podcast you had together?
Yeah. We did. It was called Dilemma, and we did like a season together, probably like 13 or 14 shows.
And then you just ended because of like geographical or logistical reasons.
Yeah,
not anything else.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like we were friendly and friends up until probably me reaching out after October 7th with some holy shit, slow the fuck down, we need to talk, which were private conversations first, and then it was this public one that frankly went terribly on my own show, that I just didn't like anything about it, but it was what it was. I don't think I could really call him a friend anymore, but it's interesting having that archive from just a philosophical perspective, because we always disagreed on it, but it was never like sort of to the point of we're never going to talk again. It was sort of fun to disagree about like hypothetical philosophical trolley problem type things. And then the world turned into a genocide, and then the disagreements got pretty real, I guess.
And I came across you again because of that conversation that you had with Coleman. So it popped up on my YouTube feed. And I was like, wait a minute, that name sounds familiar to me. And I was like, is this the same person? And I'm like, this could not be the same person because they're sounding very leftist. And
Can I tell you one more thing about the film? Sorry to keep cutting you off. But this is super important because I know you have a focus on Sam. If you do watch the film, there is a point in the film about an hour in where the conversation of sort of, well, I guess what's called wokeness, but sort of regressive left, I think is how Maajid was talking about it at the time, was coming up, and I was letting Sam sort of lay out his argument about the role of sort of earthly grievances and their variable in sort of violence, as opposed to sort of just a pure religious story of radicalization. And he, without any prompting by me, in his answer, says that you can, I think the exact phrase is, you can play that game more or less successfully with different cases, perhaps the Palestinians.
Ooh.
He says this, not me, in the film, and I certainly left it in to be like, well, obviously that's a case where, you know, a massive historical injustice plays a monumental role in explaining violence of any kind, and of course Islam weaves in and out of that however we want to talk about that, but he said that on his own. And the fact that like 10 years later it's just where he is now is disappointing, shocking, revealing, all those kinds of things that I'm sure you know, but it's like that's part of the conversation in the film, that it's like, I thought back to that original, like, hey, okay, it's stupid when George W. Bush says this has nothing to do with Islam. And I get that that's maybe a dangerous kind of non-nuanced projection, even if it's well-intentioned. But I thought the answer wasn't, well, it has everything to do with Islam.
That's the only factor.
I thought the real conversation we were supposed to have is, well, we need to talk about this in an honest way and, you know, figure out sort of moral truth and historical truth and whatever else. But no, that's why part of the reason I'm also proud of that film is, like, of course, this is not a case that, like, Islam bad, Muslims evil, get rid of them all. Like, that's not the film.
Yeah, it's ethnic cleansing, not a big deal. Happens all the time.
Yeah, it's just ethnic cleansing.
Yeah, whatever.
So I'll let you ask questions. I've been ranting for like 20 minutes, but that's who I am.
Well, look, I was very pleasantly surprised to discover that it was actually you, the person who I was like remembering because of doing the film on Sam Harris. And I was like, holy shit, like, this person is very well informed on the Israel-Palestine situation. They're not making excuses for genocide. This is very odd. And then here they are also like talking to Coleman Hughes, and they're a former co-host of Coleman Hughes. So it was all, I was like, what is happening? How is this person associated with these people? How did they get to their current politics and also be like with those people not so long ago? So I was very confused, but I'm very, very happy to see like how well informed and thoughtful and
I appreciate that. I mean, I could give you a little. I think I bought into the heterodox thing that they were pitching. And the truth is, you know, I've always had leftist, justice-oriented moral philosophy, which I would love to lay out with you and really get into, because it's the thing that is just a foreign philosophical object to someone like Sam or Coleman, or we could get off those names, but any of these names. And, you know, I thought, all right, this heterodox thing, we all have to talk. This is a big, important time in the world. Well, all right, I'm a leftist voice here, but the truth is there was really no room. It wasn't a heterodox room. There's no room for leftist perspectives at all. I mean, zero. And
not at all. Yeah,
right.
And they're more
let
willing
alone the woke thing. Yeah,
to compromise with like the far, far, far right than anyone even might. Like, I remember Sam Harris calling Ezra fucking Klein a far left radical who's like,
he doesn't know. He doesn't
as
know
bad as the KKK.
Yeah, he thinks Hamas is worse than the Nazis. All this. I mean, he's really lost it. Also, just on the Sam thing, like, I think, you know, I lurk his Reddit every now and then. I think his own fans are getting pretty tired of his shtick at this point. And, you know, I hope they do. He's just, you know, he's doing a tour now, but of course he's not doing a Q&A live. And there's a lot of obvious reasons for that. And it's like, Sam's just a guy. I also kind of don't like picking on him. Again, like, we were friends. I got nothing personally against the dude, although he did mistreat me in a fucked up way and never apologized for it. But
I would love to hear about that.
I mean, it's a short one. It's just annoying. But yeah, he's just a guy, right? Like, he was just a dude who was watching the news when 9/11 hit and then wrote a book. Like, there's nothing special about Sam. He just has this kind of strange, slow speaking style that hypnotizes a lot of people and pulls people in a certain way. But like, he's just a guy. and
he's also very privileged and is set up with a lot of contacts in the media and can like have large platforms before he's ever famous, right? Like, that helps.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need to like shit on him in some personal way. I think he's really just an intellectual coward, honestly, with his philosophy. He's a Hobbesian to the core, but he's just, his line that he made all his money on was this, like, I don't want to be wrong 1 second longer than I have to be.
Yes.
And it's bullshit. It's total
so
bullshit.
Frustrating because
it's very frustrating.
Yeah. Actively avoid new information or re-examine his beliefs, or he will just not do those things while patting himself on the back for being so excellent at doing those things. Yeah,
and being so willing to change his mind. And it's just not true, which is okay. He could be stubborn with this. I mean, I think a lot of his hypocrisy has been revealed with that. But ultimately it comes down to, and I could get into sort of like the philosophical differences, because when I really started, I mean, it's been really helpful for me, to be honest, this whole process of sharpening my thinking of like, what really is my difference with these people from, like, because I study philosophy from like a real philosophical systemic point of view. And it's not all that complicated. It's someone like Sam or Coleman or a lot of these names we could bring up, I already brought in Hobbes and Leviathan if people know him. It's just ultimate consequentialism, ultimate sort of trading in freedom, real existential freedom, for safety and security. It's in quotes, it's a peace-oriented philosophy rather than a justice-oriented philosophy. And the one, if you saw my debacle with Coleman, and I should have just stopped the in quotes debate and stayed here, the piece of philosophy I wanted to debate with him was that, the difference between justice and peace. And it's almost very simple, to be honest, where I say, peace is not something that you aim for. Peace is not a goal. Peace is an emergent property of the conditions of justice being honestly sought. Which is a philosophical sort of dance, but an important one, because of course justice is this very flimsy idea. What does it mean? And I could explain how I think that's an actual eternal human condition, to be forever going on the quest of justice, and we're always playing catch up with history. But that's it. We're stuck with that. That's what justice is, and we're an animal that seeks justice and dignity and and avoids humiliation and blah blah blah. And they don't understand that. They can't approach that. So they get to sound very rational about peace and utilitarianism. So utilitarianism, this like maximize flourishing and minimize suffering mathematics that someone like they want to do.
But it's also not always applied by them, because there are many cases where they're not advocating for the maximum flourishing. They just want the flourishing of the right people.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem is it's infinitely flexible. They can always point to a counterfactual universe that it could have been worse if I didn't kill those 30 babies or whatever. But the real, I think, philosophical problem, because like there's a couple ways out of the maze of the Sam Harris way of thinking. And again, if there's some people who are listening to you who are fans of his way of thinking and happen to make it this far into the podcast without turning it off, there are ways out of the maze. And if you're a strict utilitarian, if you're like, well, what's wrong with this idea of maximizing flourishing and minimizing suffering? Isn't that great? Like, isn't that the point of things? Well, okay, I could like one way out of the maze is through the center, where it's like, I'm just going to tell you that flourishing without an honest engagement of justice is a false kind of flourishing. And that's it. So like it's always going to be at risk of being toppled by people discovering that their so-called, peace and flourishing was built, on a legacy of genocide or whatever that will drain the kind of existential flourishing that you're after. It's a simple misunderstanding of the human condition, which is why I'm a humanist, and Sam is just forever confused and will forever be ethnically cleansing and genociding in pursuit of some horizon of this so-called peace that you'll never reach. So you could get out of the maze through the center and still be a utilitarian by just saying I'm a justice sort of oriented utilitarian. And Sam has no idea what you're talking about, right?
And this is also kind of the philosophy behind the effective altruism stuff, right? Which,
they try
as you
to
can
measure
see,
this.
is very, very quickly turns into eugenicsy stuff, right? Flourishing for who?
Well, again, it's infinitely flexible. I mean, one of the probably the funniest piece of argumentation about the effective altruism is I'm blanking on his name now. Who was the guy that got busted? SBK.
SBF. Sam Bankman.
Sam Bankman-Fried. SBF.
Another one. Sam Harris misjudged and had on a show.
Oh, just a terrible judge of character, right? and so which is kind of, let me be honest, it's kind of true. Like, character is the thing. And my entire moral philosophy is built on moral integrity and justice and all these kinds of things. So, Sam Bankman-Fried probably was lacking in that. But there was this amazing piece of sleight of hand of the effective altruist where he said, it's kind of brilliant. He's like, well, I need to take a flight and I could sit in coach for $100, or I could sit in first class for $10,000. But I've done the math, and the odds that I'll sit next to a billionaire are really high if I get the first class ticket.
Oh, gosh.
And it's a 5-hour long plane trip, and I'm pretty good at persuading people. And so if I have a 1% chance of persuading someone, and there's a 1% chance I sit next to a billionaire, there's this much potential earnings on the table if I do this, and I've done the math, and so I'm going to buy the first class ticket, right? You can do that.
You can always do that. And this is the thing. Sam would always complain about leftists demonizing wealth. He would complain about them not being sufficiently kind to Mark Zuckerberg, who's, donated whatever to hospitals and stuff. But look at the harm that he's also doing.
Yeah, or his buddy Elon Musk.
His buddy Elon Musk, who even after they had a personal falling out, Sam still pointed out in that article that, look, our politics align very much. I, too, am concerned about wokeness and immigration and this and that. And it's this is the problem, because it is, as you said, very, very flexible. You can keep making excuses forever. But I just want to go back to our original conversation. You were telling me that more about what happened between you and Sam personally, I think. Oh,
well, it was just, this is just the anecdote of annoyance, but it's fair to tell you, is that, so I wasn't, I'm a behind the camera guy. And after October 7th, the audience should also know this. I co-wrote a book with his wife, Annaka Harris, who I like very much. And it was about theory of mind. It's an audiobook out by Macmillan called Lights On. And it's great. And there's no politics in it. For nerds who are into consciousness stuff and theory of mind stuff, it's really an amazing listen. And I was very proud of it. And we were in the editing process when October 7th happened. And that led to a lot of very strained conversations. And Annaka is a bit more private, so I'm not going to throw her too much into the wolves here on your show, but I can share that she nor Sam, they have 2 daughters, knew nothing, literally nothing about this topic, and was asking me to sort of help kind of offer some context to this stuff. Very quickly, she didn't like the context I was offering.
Yeah, because she was posting some pretty awful Israel propaganda. And she very soon after.
And she knew nothing. The only thing, I'm not exaggerating, the only thing they knew about the Israel-Palestine conflict was that the Palestinians were majority Muslim. That's it. I'm not exaggerating. And so, but she knew that I really liked Sam. I also, your audience should know, I did a 10-part series for Sam archiving his show. It's called The Essential Sam Harris, where it was sort of like going through his whole show. They hired me to like do these kind of like mini documentaries in audio form on different topics that he's interested in, using interviews that he's done over the years on Making Sense, and Megan Phelps Roper did the voice. Again, good work. And to his credit, he allowed me to often include some pretty good pushback on some of his ideas and his guests, and I insisted
like in
on
your
that.
voice, like you were
Yeah,
saying
sometimes I would sort of like write things in between the clips. It's like a glorified clip show, but done a little elevated to almost like an audio documentary. But then also just sometimes guests who made great points against him that I was like, we need to include this in there, things like AI and whatever. And, to his credit, he's like, yeah, whatever, put it in. Although I think he tried to distance himself from some of them.
Yeah, but that's because he only has guests that he can very safely disagree with.
Well, at this point, yeah, maybe I scared him with it when I was like, your guess was really right there. On the Islam thing, he never talks to anyone, but
the Israel thing.
Well, now it's this is the thing. Like, he never really talked about Israel before, and there was good reason. He literally knew
did that
nothing.
One episode in 2014.
Yeah, one article. Yep.
Called like "Why Don't I Criticize
Why
Israel?"
Don't I Criticize Israel?
Yeah.
In which he wrote. I've used it in his face. Which he wrote that the settlers should be dragged off the land by their beards, and I've used that line. But he totally went
right
back
in line with his, anti-religion. He doesn't go beyond that. It's like, okay, they're extremists, so they're bad, but there's a lot more like secular awfulness there too.
Oh yeah. No, so October 7th happened when we were wrapping up that project, and in the sales thing, and these conversations happened. Anyway, Annaka set up a call between Sam and I that was like 3 hours long. It wasn't supposed to be, where I was like, listen, I have to talk to Sam about this, because he had already put out a few really awful things about it. And I also knew, of course, she was helping him write those, which was not great. Like these 5 myths about Israel and stuff, which were all 5 were wrong. It was just really, really like frustrating, right? Because I was like, you have 1 million people listening to you. Mm-hmm. And literally, I'm not exaggerating, literally people like Sheryl Sandberg were reaching out to Sam, who then went on to make one of the most harmful pieces of propaganda. And like the point is, I'm going to go way back in this conversation, because this shit got out of hand, right?
Please subscribe to patreon.com/nice mangoes to access the extended version of this episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support it, there are several ways you can do that. You can share it online, talk about what you just heard. You can leave a 5-star review to help others find it too. And you can also subscribe via patreon.com/nice mangoes. No E in mangoes. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter before it's completely wrecked, you'll find me at Nice Mangoes. Again, no E in mangoes.